I was once married, and I am no longer married. And there seems to be an increase in conflicts within marriage today.
Yes.
What's the legal standpoint of conflicts in marriage?
Marriages are not socialized to expect conflict. Yet, conflict is inevitable. It's actually more inevitable in marriage than anywhere else, for the fact that you put together two people who are adults. You require that they must be adults by the time they meet. So therefore, so formed and so socialized in a certain way.
And they've had experiences.
Absolutely. So conflict is inevitable. But when you are getting married, nobody tells you to expect conflict. Therefore, you first may not even recognize how conflict manifests, what it looks like. So many people have told me they thought that there was something wrong with them. So we need to socialize people to expect conflict, because it's inevitable. And so that when conflict stems in, they know where to go to. And the people that they go to know how to handle conflict. Because in socializing people to expect conflict, then we'll also be empowering people to be able to conflict resolve. Because when aunties and uncles ask you, have you been beaten? Have you been thrown out of the house? Have you been done this and that? So why are you complaining? They do it from what they know. You see. But if we intentionally set out to help people understand conflict, then we will also set up mechanisms of resolving the conflict. And much conflict within marriage is resolved, by the way. But there is conflict also that escalates to the point where people have to separate or people have to divorce. My take of the situation is that before conflict goes into the legal mechanisms, if it is possible to stop it from getting there, because of course where there has been violence, the place to go to, of course, is the law, you see. But in all the circumstances where conflict gets to that point, I tell people that the best way, if you have the opportunity to, is to start exiting marriage from where it first vests, and that's emotionally. And the next place to go to is the physical. And the third and distant one is the legal. Because you have to remember that this is an emotional investment, it's an emotional relationship.
Correct.
Even if you get a court decree dissolving the marriage, even if you're physically separated, marriage still resides within you. And that's why at the beginning of my practice, if somebody showed up with certain symptoms, the other person has been cruel to them, they have been unfaithful, as what we knew from the law book is file a petition for divorce in court. And so we would do that, okay? And then after court, after giving them the divorce decree, they're still calling and they're still unhappy. And I'm like, what else am I supposed to do? So in time we learned that the divorce decree heals nothing of the marriage invested in you. And actually that is the place where you most feel the marriage. And actually I tell people that in a conflict situation or in a separated situation, you have the marriage certificate in your pocket, but it provides you no comfort. So even if I gave you a decree of divorce, it will provide you no comfort unless and until it's exited from you. So that's when we recommend counselors, that's when we recommend mediators, and that's when we recommend time. Because, by the way, God gave us time for free. We don't recognize about what a huge, huge asset it is to us. Because in time, you get a perspective of everything. In time, people heal. In time, people find a new normal. Not just the couple, but even the children that they have brought up in that union. Even the parents, by the way. Even the people around you, you see. So time is critical. I need to take this a little back and say that at the manifestation of conflict, and when we were talking about the conflict solving or resolving mechanisms, one of the key places to go to is a counselor, okay? Because a counselor is able to walk with you and help you see things perhaps that you didn't see, from perspectives you didn't see. And many times the counselor is able to call in the other person and help them understand one another better, like even that case of the toothpaste and stuff like that, you see. The other person that is very important, other than the family, because the family remains very helpful in conflict resolution situation, is a mediator. And now we have many trained mediators in this country. Who are mediators? And by the way, I'm a mediator. A mediator is supposed to help facilitate discussion or conversation between two people who cannot otherwise converse on their own. I don't know whether you guys know it, but this is the normal thing that happens in a conversation between husband and wife, or between two people who are emotionally invested. One person waiting for the other person to finish so that they can show them how wrong they are. It is said of the female species, we keep dates, we keep hours to the minute of the last time you said and what you said.
Receipts.
Okay, and receipts and everything else. So we are very unlikely not to succeed in a conversation, a heated conversation between the spouses. But here is what, so you never quite hear what the other person is saying.
Correct.
Because you're waiting for them to finish so that you can respond and prove them wrong and to show you're the one who's wrong precisely. You did this and this. But a mediator brings the walls down between the two of you and is able to have you, a skilled mediator, will be able to have you hear one another. I dare say that for most couples, the first time they hear the other person, hear is not just the sound, but hear and listen and hear is when it will be the assistance of a mediator. So, they hear things like, when you do that, it makes me feel taken for granted. It makes me unhappy. Because in the home they are saying, but that's how I like to do my things. If you don't like it, go to the other room, stuff like that. But here, they're able to hear, when you do that, it makes me feel sad. It makes me feel unhappy. And they don't quite want to make the other person unhappy or sad. The point is that there can be nothing better in marriage or in society at large than skilled mediators, than counselors to provide help with conflict resolution. Because, by the way, almost all situations, especially family situations, can be resolved by none else than the couple seated here. But as they never listen to one another, as they never have regard to different perspectives, then they never can resolve nothing. But before the mediator, they're able to do it. And I'll tell you something. For me, when I mediate, I start from this perspective. Your truth is valid because it's very possible to have different truths about the same situation. Okay? Because you see things from a different lens. Remember what we said, your socialization. You see things this way. Okay? A glass of wine is too much for you if you grew up in different circumstances. A bottle of wine, Carol, may be too little for you, depending on how you grew up. So both your truths about that are valid. So I tell people, we are not going to be here saying you are wrong and you're right, because it doesn't matter. What I believe, I do. Okay, and I want you to acknowledge that. Acknowledge this is what I believe, and acknowledge that I'm coming from somewhere. And then after that, so you state your truth, and Carol states her truth, and then we move on from there, because we still have children between us. We still have a marriage between us. If you keep to your truth and I keep to my truth, how do we still resolve what is between us? And there is nothing better than when you validate a human being.
Correct.
In marriage, Ken, it is my way or the highway. If I say this is a lot, then it's a lot. You see? And if you say this is little, then this is little. But imagine it is possible to live with those two different perspectives, because nobody needs to win. You can have a win-win. You keep your truth and you keep
your truth.
your truth. Yes.
Amazing.
Judy, you spoke about emotional dissolution of marriage. So could you please take us through the physical dissolution of marriage?
Happily, but I need to remind you that it's my own prescription. I don't think that it exists in any psychology or in any legal book. But this is the experience that I've had at the table, that a marriage breaks down at 3 levels. The emotional, and which is the first one that should be dealt with. Because if you haven't dealt with that, it doesn't matter what else you do. You remain pained, you remain hurt, and you are unable to focus on how to move on with your life. And that's when I was then saying that seek help, seek counseling, and seek mediation, and most of all, recognize that time heals. So once you're done with the emotional healing, and sometimes it doesn't always follow that course, then it's time to think about the physical circumstances. Because of course in a marriage, chances are that you will be together with the person that you're seeking to separate or to divorce from. So how do you divorce from somebody with whom you are in the same physical circumstances? It's not practical. Although I must say that there are cases where divorces have been, even the legal divorce has been done when people have been in the same situation or in the same house, so to speak. Back in the old days, there used to be people who could live in the north wing of a house and the other person lives in the south wing. It's not available to many people, the north and south wings.
Sure.
So, but some people are so amicable at divorce that they can actually be in the same house and still manage. So anyway, for the other people, most of them that cannot bear being in the same physical space, we propose that before they go to court for the legal divorce, they work at physically separating themselves. And that's not just about the physical space, by the way. It's also about the other things that hold them together. And the children are important in this regard. Recognizing if you are in physical separate spaces, how are you going to co-parent them? How are you going to provide for them? How simply are you going to participate in their lives, knowing that they have a right, to both parents? So that's what's done at the physical divorce space. So many times through mediation, we help people come up with parental responsibility agreements where they provide, for custodial issues and how to exercise all forms of parental responsibility in that space. Then, of course, there is property that you hold together, sometimes, not always the case. How do you separate that property? And then there are also matters, finance and other assets. So we help people come up with settlement agreements. Now again, mediation is the best way to have resolution at that level. So we have settlement agreements. So once you're emotionally healed, then you're physically divorced, so to speak, then it becomes very easy to proceed to the third level of it. Okay, by that time it's bereft of pain because the pain has been dealt with, and you almost make practical decisions. So at the legal divorce, it is important to let you know that there is no other way of ending a marriage legally than going through divorce. Even if you've been apart for 20 years, you're still not divorced until you're divorced by a court of law. So the law provides several grounds as the basis on which it can pronounce a divorce. One of them is cruelty, which can be emotional, can be physical, against the other spouse or the children of that marriage. It also provides for adultery or infidelity on the part of one person. It provides for desertion for a period of 3 years. If you've deserted somebody for a period of 3 years, it becomes a ground for divorce. It also provides a ground called irretrievable breakdown of marriage, like it's completely broken down. But there has to be a threshold. You don't just say it's irretrievably broken down. The simplest, the easiest, the one that does not constitute of washing dirty linen in public is when you've been separated for 24 months. So that if you've been apart for a period of 24 months, that's all you need to bring before the court. And on the basis of that, the court will pronounce divorce. So here's the thing that we tell people who could write physics in terms of the amount of cruelty that they have faced or the amount of infidelity that they have faced. But we tell them, the marriage is not ending in court. It ended elsewhere. So you don't need to wash your dirty linen in public unless it's absolutely important, you see. And we tell them that, marital disharmony and divorce, it will always be such a difficult thing or stage, because no one gets married to divorce. So you owe it to meet yourself to mitigate, the end, to mitigate the consequences of that at the end. And so that's when we tell people, if you can help it and stay apart for 24 months, you begin to get used to a new normal. And in that time, then you have dealt with the emotional, you have dealt with the physical, and then you have the perfect ground for divorce without washing the dirty linen in public. So you can use all those grounds. You have the ability to, the authority to, but you don't have to use them. Pick an easier way out, because it allows you to continue to co-parent after that, when the linen that you threw in the public was not too ugly.
Very true.
Yes, yeah.
Well, we're talking about physical dissolution. You mentioned about the parental responsibilities within a separation with the physical.
Yes.
Separation.
Oh, parental responsibility agreements.
Exactly. So is that something that have we already not entered the legal dissolution at that point? Or I'm trying to understand just a little bit.
Oh, that's a good one.
During the physical separation, if you're getting the parental responsibility agreement, then at that point, have you not entered a legal realm?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do it at that point. You can do it before you go for divorce.
Okay.
Because what complicates divorce so many times is because there's so many unresolved issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you are thinking, I want to look good because I want to apply for custody, and I don't want the custody court to think I'm a bad person. You see? So even if you are drunk, you will fight it. You fight being called that because it has consequences down the road.
Yes.
But if you've already ensured that you're part of the children's lives, then you don't care, you don't quite care what is said in the divorce court. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's very important to state that things may not happen in the order that I have stated. Some things may come before the others and all that. But what remains a very, very sensitive topic for most couples is children, and how each of the spouses who are in conflict are going to participate in their lives. So we speak to child custody, we speak to child maintenance, and we can discuss that when we next meet. Thank you.
All right.